Well, that's where the tree was. Well, we ended up cutting that tree down and burning it. And it took a couple days, and I used my John Deere 1025R tractor to do it. So if you're interested, let's get into this. Alright, here is the tree that we got cut down, and we did this just before Hurricane Idalia showed up. So most of the cleanup is actually of us burning the tree. However, Hurricane Idalia left us with a lot of large and small limbs all over our yard. So I cleaned up all that debris and burnt it in the fire also, including some logs from the property across the street. This tree had some damage from a lightning strike, and I'll show it to you once it's laying on the ground. So these guys had the top of this tree tied to a large truck, and it was pulling tension on the tree. So when the tree fell, it fell where they wanted it to fall. Well, here's the tree laying on the ground the next day, and the trees are really starting to blow around in the wind. And you don't realize how much they're blowing around the wind until you speed it up a little bit. And then you can see how far they're swaying from left to right. I think our dog Rascal was channeling how we felt. She was just laying on the ground watching the trees blow, hoping nothing bad happened to her yard. Well, here's the next morning, and here's probably a better look at our damaged tree. You can see why we wanted to get that one cut down. And it had damage from that lightning strike that went all the way down one side of the tree. And where it went down that side of the tree just was rotten. So let's get a fire started and see if we can't get some of this debris burning. The top of the tree was out of frame when it was being cut down, but there was quite a few limbs to it. So we had the tree cut down Tuesday evening. The storm came through Wednesday afternoon. And Thursday morning we got out to see the damage and started cleaning up. I started a fire Thursday afternoon, kept the fire going through the evening, and came in about 2 a.m. Friday morning. This would be Friday morning about 8 a.m. And this is all that's left of the tree I cut down. I've got the top half completely taken care of. Well, it's Saturday morning, and I spent all day yesterday with the lawnmower and the yard cart, picking up sticks and putting them in the center of the fire. I would put them in the center of the fire and then go get another load. So there is an extremely hot bed of coals right in the center. And originally I had stacked these logs around the edge so that I could approach the fire and make it easier to put stuff on it, because the heat is just that intense. This is about the third time I've used this John Deere subcompact tractor to tend to a fire. And it definitely makes things a lot easier because it puts you away from the heat. I can reach in with the forklift tongs and pick up burning logs and move things around so that they get more air and everything keeps burning. I really take my time when I'm moving these burning logs around because I don't want anything to roll out towards the tractor. But I'll speed the footage up so that way you can see what's really going on, and we won't have to take 10 minutes doing it. I also use the tongs on the forklift like a push bar, and I will push the logs around instead of lifting them up. And just moving the logs around and changing their orientation allows more air to get around them. And you can see how these logs are now burning a lot more than they were before I started. And if you keep the tongs close together, you can really pick up some pretty small pieces if you need to. Here's what's left of the trunk of the tree. And you can see how I've taken my chainsaw and cut it up into pieces that I can put on the fire. I'll probably take all these small pieces and put them in the back so that way I can use them for the fire pit. And now I'll get back on Johnny and get some more of these pieces put on the fire. It doesn't take too long with a little bit of practice, and you can use these forks to move things around quite efficiently. I think the forks are probably the most useful tool on this little John Deere tractor that I have. or at least the way I use it. I can pick up about 650 pounds with it, and that's actually quite a bit of weight, making for some pretty big logs. These logs that I'm putting on their side and pushing towards the fire are actually like a fire break to keep the fire from spreading. The logs burn in such a manner that the only thing that's going to happen is just the side that's facing the fire is going to burn, but it's too thick for the fire to burn all the way through it. Boy, the center of this fire is really hot. You can tell just by the way these logs are catching on fire that there's a tremendous amount of heat in there. I'm sure a lot of the stuff I do would probably be easier if I had two people. But me, myself, and I seem to have to do these jobs by ourselves. So this is what it's like. I seem to drive the tractor, me seems to have to do all the manual work, and myself always seems to be behind the camera. I forget what they call that device that's on the steering wheel that allows me to use just one hand to turn it and use the other hand to control the forks on the front loader. But whatever it's called, it sure makes driving the tractor a lot easier. Well, most of the day has gone by and I have spent most of it attending the fire, and I only have one log left. I'm really surprised how well these logs are burning, because it's just a bunch of big logs on there. And this log represents the last of the tree we had cut down. I have found that it's really pretty easy to slide these logs off of the forks too when you want to stand them up on one end. That is one hot fire. Well, it's starting to get pretty late in the day. I've got about an hour before it's dark, and I'm going to head across the street and get some logs off of that piece of property and keep the fire burning all the way through the night. Well, this is the first of many logs, and I cut these quite a bit longer than the ones from the front yard. I don't know if it's a guy thing or not, but I would compare being on this tractor to doing yoga. Somehow it just makes you feel at ease, and it's very relaxing and very enjoyable. And here you can see the logs that I'm picking up from across the street, and there's quite a few of these too. Well, here you go. This is about as close as we're going to get to drone footage with me. Across the street and back up the driveway and onto the fire this log goes. Another reason I stand up the logs around the edge of the fire is it keeps logs from rolling out when I put them on top. And like most valuable knowledge, that lesson was learned through experience. I was moving a log around that was burning on one side, and I went to put it in the fire and it rolled back out towards me. Quite a surprise, and that will get your attention pretty quick and your adrenaline pumping, which means I probably should say this too. Be careful. This fire is in the center of my driveway, not because that's where I wanted it, because that was where there was no trees above it. There's also not much grass growing right here. So it's not that I'm not trying to kill the grass. I'm trying to make sure I don't set the rest of the yard on fire. And if you see me do something unsafe, please don't do it yourself. I still have some sticks in some of the pine straw beds, but that's the last of them from the yard. And check out the fire. So the storm came through on Wednesday, and I started cleaning up on Thursday and really got the fire going on Friday, and now it's Monday. So I've been burning stuff and restacking those logs for the last 3 days. But by the end of today, the fire will be done. I couldn't have done it without Johnny. It's too hot to get close, and the logs are too heavy. Without the tractor, I just couldn't have kept piling it on itself. And even now, it's still too hot to stand next to. Well, like, subscribe, check out my playlist, and I'll see you in whatever video's next.